Over 50 years ago, his father and a friend started a small business selling health supplements out of their homes. Today, it's one of the largest privately held firms in the country and one of the most international enterprises in the world. Doug DeVos, president and co-CEO of Amway, is this week's leader on leadership.
Knowing when to ask for help is critical when you're in a leadership position.
It's getting the best out of people. That's the essence of leadership.
Major funding for Leaders on Leadership is provided by Greenleaf Trust.
Helping people manage their wealth, accumulate assets, and preserve those assets for generational continuity implies trust. We are sitting down on the same side of the desk as you are. We're planning for your financial needs.
Additional funding provided by the Wayne State University School of Business Administration.
Welcome to Leaders on Leadership, here with a student audience on campus at the Wayne State University and Detroit Public Television Midtown Detroit studio. I'm Larry Phobes. Doug DeVos leads a company of 14,000 global employees, selling through 3 million independent business owners from their headquarters in a township of about 10,000 residents. Thanks for being here, Doug.
Great, thanks, Larry. Great to be here.
When your father and Jay Van Andel started the company, what was it like when they started? What can you remember about the early days of the company?
Well, I remember being small, and I remember everyone being in our little town of Ada, Michigan. We would go to employee events, Christmas events, the Christmas party down there. I remember being with families that worked at the company, and a lot of our independent business owners would come to our homes. Dad and Jay would entertain, and we would have jobs of welcoming them and looking after them, and we all had something to do to be part of it.
Now, when I was studying the company, the company that became Amway wasn't their first try. They had several false starts before that, which is pretty common. Henry Ford's, the current Ford Motor Company, it was Henry Ford's, I think, fourth try.
Right.
Is this whole idea of fluid determinism that I'm going to keep looking to find the right thing, but I'm going to keep going, is that some kind of a characteristic for entrepreneurial leaders?
I think it is. Dad and Jay always wanted to be in business. They wanted to be in business together. Their first business, they got into business teaching people how to fly originally, and they didn't know how to fly themselves. They wanted to go to South America. They bought a boat and they sunk off the coast of Cuba. They had other businesses that failed, and then when they started Neutralite and then began Amway, that was when they got some focus and momentum and found a business that they felt they could be successful with.
If you go to the movie image for entrepreneurial partners, it usually involves a lot of yelling and arguing and throwing of coffee cups. Is that the image you remember of Jay and your father in the early days, when the company was struggling to get started?
They were best friends. They were best friends from school. Right after high school, they both went off into World War II and served, and they wrote letters back and forth about how they wanted to get in business together. And it was one of Jay's letter to my dad, Richie, someday, Richie, this war is going to end. Someday it's going to get better. Someday we're going to be able to make it. And that was their dream. And they kept working towards that, but they always stayed together. They would never blame each other when something went wrong. They never pointed a finger and said, "I told you so." Even when somebody would make a mistake, they would get together and say, "How do we fix the problem?" rather than assign the blame.
Sounds like a case study in how teams ought to operate.
And I got to grow up in that environment. We all did. My family and the Van Andel family. That's what they taught us, not just by what they said, but by what they did. And we had lots of stuff go wrong. We had lots of tough times that we got to watch Dad and Jay go through difficult experiences. But they always put the problem there and said, how are we going to fix it?
Now, fast forward today, you're the son of one of the founders, and you're co-CEO and president, and the chairman, another co-CEO, is the son of another one of the founders. Yeah. How do you balance the benefits of having this consistent family ownership and leadership, so you get a nice fixed on the vision, with the need for new revolutionary, where the heck did that idea come from? That usually comes from people who have a different experience.
Sure, sure. Well, there's a couple things. I think for Steve and myself, we share the same history. We share a common value base. And it allows in our partnership an ability to talk to somebody without feeling you're exposed. If I have a question, I can go to someone safe and say, what do you think? And vice versa. But we also know that there's a lot of people that are a lot smarter than we are. And we want to get the best people as part of our company, and we want to get out of their way. As long as we know where the values are and the direction of where we're going, we want to let them demonstrate their leadership as well. We listen to the best ideas and try to help them develop them and help them implement them in any way that we can. But we know that there's people with more creativity than we have, with an innovative spark that our business needs, and we want to find it and help them find it in themselves.
So even if they come with an idea that's totally foreign to the Amway method, it's worth looking at.
Everything's worth looking at. Let's see what happens, as long as it's consistent with our values. If it's not consistent with our values, we can generally address that. But we're pretty clear with people when they come to the business what they're getting into, what our business is, what it's all about. And so if there's a values conflict, problem. But when it's consistent with our values, but it's just a new angle, a new way to do something, we welcome that. Let's take it to the next level. Let's develop it and see what it could be and how it could help. Because a lot of those sorts of ideas have been really important to the success of the business.
You went off and did your business degree at Purdue. Got a little leadership experience being one of the quarterbacks on that famous football team. I'm assuming that people on the field didn't give you any special consideration because your dad was a famous business leader. When you came back to the company and started working full time, how did you go about building relationships with other employees in the company because of your last name, so that you could get a good working relationship going, but they didn't treat you differently or differentially?
Yeah. Well, to a certain extent, as we said earlier, we grew up in the business. A lot of people that I started to work with, I had known before I started to work there, and they knew me. Being Rich's son probably gave me an opportunity to be part of the company. But beyond that, they treated me as a friend, as a colleague, and they judged me based on what I could contribute to the team. What could I add? What would I do if I was able to be a positive impact or have a positive impact? Bring ideas that I may have had to the team, whatever the role may have been. They accepted me, they encouraged me, and a lot of times they really helped me. And I'm grateful for so many colleagues that I worked with throughout my career who helped develop me, who had experience, and even though I was young, they shared it with me.
Let's fast forward a bit. We talked a little bit about the company when it first got started. Give us an overview of what is the company today, what's its business, the other parts of the Altacore Group.
Sure. Well, the company continues to be the Amway business, and our primarily that's what drives us. Giving people an opportunity to have a business of their own in over 80 countries and territories around the world, with over 450 products, with millions of independent business owners, as you said, and the scope of the business today has become truly global. We are spread all around the world. And it presents us with unique challenges of how to operate like that. It's not just a U.S. business with a few international affiliates. Our biggest market is outside of the U.S. The U.S. continues to be a strong market for us and a great market for us, but it spans beyond that.
And one of the aspects of your business that makes it a little bit distinctive is the multi-level direct marketing.
Mm-hmm.
What's that? How's it work?
The direct selling concept is basically two things. You earn money. You start with a business of your own, and you earn money by selling products and getting a retail margin. And then the magic of our business is your ability to develop a sales force, that you can help develop, train, lead a sales force. You help them make money, and then there's commissions that flow to you for the work that you've done through your time, talent, and leadership. That by helping somebody else earn money, you are able to earn an income based on the products that they sell.
You mentioned a minute ago that the company was extremely global.
Yes.
90% of income from overseas markets. Steve Van Andel made a comment a while ago that when you change from being an international company to being a multicultural company, you start getting some new ideas.
Right.
What's the difference between the two terms and what kind of ideas come out of it?
Well, in the way we speak of things, being an international company means, well, we take our U.S. ideas and we plant our flag in another market. And we did that a lot. When we started expanding around the world, we took the exact same products and did it here, and we did it there. And it worked okay. But when we became global, what we started to find was that we had great management and distributor or IBO leaders in different markets who would say, here's how we should do it for this market. They'd create a new idea. For the example, make smaller packaging, because people can't afford a 1 liter bottle in India. You need to make it smaller so people can understand the pricing. Well, that's an idea that works in a lot of markets. In China, we needed physical locations. We needed a presence in every city for every province in which we were operating. We'd never had physical presence like that before. So we created those shops, and we found that our sales force loved it. They could bring in their customers and prospects. They could talk about the brands with confidence that they never had before. And so that idea started to go to markets around the world. And then the third I would just say is technology, being able to use technology. Korea was one of our more advanced places with taking orders online in the late 90s and early 2000s.
The numbers I read in your publications that 90% of your revenues today come from outside the U.S. Mm-hmm. In the 80s and 90s, it was 30%.
Right.
What accounts for that growth? Is it the products that you sell? Is it something about your business model that makes it attractive, or?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I think what we were able to do is attach ourselves in a variety of ways to developing economies, or even developed economies, segments of developed economies that were looking for an opportunity that we were able to fill. So, for example, Japan was a very developed economy, but the tradition there was the salaryman and the housewife. And the housewife had a lot of talents and skills that they wanted to contribute. And so they saw our business opportunity as a way to generate income, to generate fulfillment, to apply their talents and efforts towards a productive future that they wanted. And so that's what happened in a developed market. In the developing markets, people are looking for opportunity. They may not have the same formal education or the opportunities. It's the sweat equity. They just need an opportunity to get started. And an Amway business was the perfect fit for them. There's no or low or virtually no cost to get started. You get people to help you and give you training along the way. You have access to a product line immediately, and it's just your hard work that gets you started.
With all the success that's happening in the overseas markets, you're now in a sort of a drive to reintroduce, to re-energize the brand in the U.S.
Right.
That doesn't happen very often. The companies need to reintroduce their brand to their home market. What happened?
It's kind of funny, isn't it? Well, as we went around the world, we got really broad with our geographic expansion, and it was really hard to go deep. And to a certain extent, we lost touch with some markets as we kept moving from place to place around the world. We would launch as many as 3 or 4 markets in a year. We got confused, and we went back and said, okay, time out. We're now available to over 70% of the world's population. We have great markets. It's time for us to go deep. We have to drive market share. We have to build our brands. Let's work with our independent business owners and drive training so we can establish an awareness and a reputation in the marketplace that we have not done as well with in the past. And what we found, and again, that started with some of the markets that we got into. We started to get big and get market share, and we said we should do this in every market. So let's go back. And if we're not as strong as we should be, let's make sure we do the fundamentals, the blocking and tackling to be as strong as we should be. And the U.S. is a great example of that. We've been here for over 50 years, and the business today is growing very nicely.
Over the last few years, while this has been going on, there's been some reports out in the media about some of your independent business owners using suspect business practices or questionable practices. As co-CEO of a company, how do you lead the company so that the independent business owners can do what they need to do to optimize their results in their market with their customers, but make sure that they're still following the Amway process, the Amway brand?
Sure. Well, it's leadership. What we try to do, we have to get ahead of it and be as clear as we can about here's where we're going, and then we're going to support you. We're going to tell you where the boundaries are. this is acceptable behavior, this is unacceptable behavior. We're going to set the standards for doing things properly and articulate that, and then train everybody to get you there. And we're not just going to say it, we're going to go out and try to do it ourselves. One of the big things with our branding campaigns, with getting the Amway brand back out there, is that we started talking about the Amway brand, and that gave an example for our sales force to say, oh, if that's what the company's saying, then that's what I'll say. When we talk about our products, our Nutrilite brand, our Artistry brand, we go out, we establish the message in the marketplace. It becomes very easy for them to align with that. So it's really about getting ahead and being a leader rather than just setting rules and boundaries and all that, even though that's part of it. What we found most effective is if we give the message and we're advocating, everyone says, well, I'll just do what they're doing. And we found that to be very helpful.
Thanks for being here, Doug. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll talk more with Doug DeVos, President and Co-CEO of Amway. Welcome back to Leaders on Leadership. Joining us today is Doug DeVos, President and Co-CEO of Amway, and we'll be talking about leadership and change. The firm's been around for about 50 years. It's been phenomenally successful. Are there pros and cons of being successful?
Yeah, absolutely. The pros are you're successful and you have strengths. The cons we've found, and we've articulated, our greatest risk to future success is our past success. Because it's too easy to think we can just sit back and let it go and be afraid of making a mistake, be afraid of making an investment that doesn't go well. And so what we've tried to do is really challenge ourselves to take all the strength and the learnings of the past, but challenge ourselves to be better in the future. Keep taking risks, keep making decisions, keep moving forward, because otherwise there's this tendency to just to hold on. And if you hold on too long, things slow down, and then you start going backwards. And so we have to keep pushing forwards.
Is one of the risks that successful business that plays in their mind is that we are successful, we're afraid of making the wrong change, and so they're afraid of something messing up the process?
Sure. Well, I think everyone's afraid of that, and that's what Steve and I try to do, is say failure's okay. You know, we're all going to make mistakes. We're all human. You know, boy, I make a lot of them. You know, but let's learn from them. Let's share our mistakes so others can learn from them as well. Let's make sure we don't crawl into a shell, because we have to be out in front. The marketplace is changing, and if we just get stuck and we keep doing the things that were successful in the past, the chances are those same activities won't make us successful in the future. And our duty is to keep the business successful for generations to come.
Once you make the decision to make a change and decided what it's going to be, how do you then sell it? Break through the inertia of 14,000 staff employees, 3 million independent business owners, so that it actually happens?
Well, you just do it. You have to get in front of things and keep doing it. You keep talking about it, you keep taking action with your management team, you keep taking action with any situation you see happening around the world, you keep articulating where we're going, what we want to do, and you keep the atmosphere right of bringing new ideas. Because if what we found is if we start to create that atmosphere, people will, maybe not everybody, there's a little inertia to stay the way it was, but a few people will bring an idea, and a few of them will fail, but when a few start to work, then everybody comes behind it. Everybody rallies around, and we've made another step forward. And then we just keep repeating the process. What's the next good idea? What's the next step forward? And we'll have a few steps back, we'll make some mistakes, but that we're not going to quit. We're going to keep moving forward and being the best we can be.
You lead in the shadow of some pretty successful other leaders in the company, the founders of the company, right? But they were an entrepreneurial company. You're now a $9 billion global company. Are the entrepreneurial skills that got the company started, are those the same skills and are they interchangeable with leading a much more mature, now global company?
Well, I think those skills are still required. We have to be optimistic. We have to be willing to take risks. We have to be looking to the future, and we have to pour ourselves into the business, which is exactly what Dad and Jade did. That was their life, and Steve and I try to do the same thing. But the business has gotten big, and the additional component, we've had to go find some really great people who can help us be the best we can be, who can challenge our ideas, can help us change, can help us advance to the future, and that's the component that we've had to bring together, and it's a great adventure. We've met, we've had management folks around the world who are great friends, who are incredible talents, who have brought a great energy to the business that we could never have done just by ourselves, and so I think it's that combination that keeps us moving forward.
Let's do another comparison of leadership skills. You're leading a $9 billion company that's privately held.
Yes.
What's the difference in your leadership viewpoint, your leadership horizon from somebody who's co-CEO of a $9 billion publicly held company?
Sure. Well, the main thing is long term. We have the luxury of looking long term. We have the luxury of working through a mistake without having to explain it to an analyst or to the public market. We have the support of our families who are committed to the business long term and are willing to take those risks and are encouraging us to move forward and aren't looking for a quarterly return or another penny or two on the share price so they can trade it and go to another company. They're committed just like employees and especially our independent business owners. We're committed to this business, and we have the ability to say, what's the market going to be like in 5 or 10 years? Let's spend time on that. Let's make sure we're prepared for that. We're thinking about it, and some other companies may be thinking more about the next 5 to 10 weeks because they have another analyst report or they have to meet the street's expectations. And it can be very damaging. Some companies manage it very well, and that model works. For some, it's a big challenge.
One of your leadership attributes, you're relatively open with the public about your personal values on faith, on economic development, on business in general.
Sure.
What's the place for personal values of a leader in a business? I mean, doesn't just the bottom line, bounded by regulations, drive everything?
Well, we're all people. You know, the greatest asset in our business are the people in our business, our independent business owners, our employees. And so people want to know who you are, and business is more than just numbers. Sure, you need financial performance, and you have to do financial analysis and all the other, the blocking and tackling, as we said earlier, to make sure the business operates well. But people want to know who you are. Where do you come from? What do you believe? What's your value system? And we've found that, students, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds are really interested in that. Because if they're going to pick not just a job, but a career or a business of their own, they want to know that it's going to stand the test of time. And financial performance in a quarter or a year may or may not stand the test of time. Values stand the test of time.
I've got one last question for you, Doug. One of your hobbies is you like sailing.
Right.
Your boat, WindQuest, won the Chicago-Mackinac race last year. Let's hypothetically put you in a different situation. You wake up tomorrow, and instead of CEO, co-CEO, and president of Amway, you're co-CEO and president of the company that made your racing boat. How are you going to take the leadership lessons from selling and insights from selling consumer goods to direct marketing into leading the company that makes high-end, high-tech, bespoke racing boats?
Well, a few things would start. First of all, it still becomes a passion. you got to love what you're doing. Secondly, you go back and you start with the marketplace. What's happening in the marketplace? Where, what's moving? What are people looking for? What type of sailing or racing are they doing? Third, you apply the best technology can give you. Our research and development facilities at Amway, we would have to match in a sailboat company with the research and development investments that you need to make so that you're using technology in the best ways. And so I think business skills really do translate, and they move from one type of business to another.
Thanks for being here, Doug.
Thank you.
Please join us again next time for another edition of Leaders on Leadership. See you then.
Major funding for Leaders on Leadership is provided by Greenleaf Trust.
Helping people manage their wealth, accumulate assets, and preserve those assets for generational continuity implies trust. We are sitting down on the same side of the desk as you are. We're planning for your financial needs.
Additional funding provided by the Wayne State University School of Business Administration. An encore presentation of Leaders on Leadership is available online for viewing at dptv.org.